Welcome to Norm and Fred Think About Drugs. We've taken a tough topic and we've tried to make sense out of it for you. We know that's important. Be assured, whether you're young or a little older, that we've done our very best to help you understand one of the main issues in today's world. This project has been the culmination of many years of research, discussion, inquiries, and personal reflection. Many organizations have partnered with us along our journey, and to them, we owe many thanks. Our presentation is based on real events and actual happenings. This story is real. We're sharing it because we want you to make the right choices with your life. Norm and Fred Think About Drugs. People must be looking at the sign and wondering, what is this going to be about? Is this going to be another one of those boring drug presentations where people tell you to don't do drugs and just say no? No, it's not. Is this going to be one of those presentations where people tell you what to do? No, it's not going to be one of those either. This is going to be one of those presentations where you're going to watch and you're going to think for yourself. That's why we call it Think About Drugs. You're too smart to be told what to do. When you get up in the morning, if your mother and father say to you, tie your shoes. If you don't want to do it, just as soon as you go outside, you untie them. We're going to walk through the world of drugs. And the world of drugs is a lot bigger than what you can sniff or snort or inject or boot into your veins. The world of drugs is a place that you enter into in your mind when you start solving your problems using drugs or alcohol. It's a place where you decide to use substances to fix things, and it doesn't work. And I know the world of drugs. I've been in the world of drugs for 40 years. That doesn't mean that I've been involved with drugs. It means I think about drugs. Because in this world, you can't help but think about it. We're going to show you a true life story. A life story about 4 people. These 4 people have their own separate world of drugs. You're going to meet a farm boy who's going to take you through the world of drugs that you're familiar with right now. And then you're going to meet a policeman. And this policeman's not a normal policeman. He's got the same dress and the same behaviors, but he's not going to tell you just about the legal part of drugs. He wants to tell you about what it's like to be a policeman in the world of drugs. And then you're going to meet 2 people. Guess what their names are? Norm and Fred. And Norm's a drug dealer. Norm's like every drug dealer that I ever knew. Norm is going to take you into the world of drugs. He's going to show you every drug that exists in this country. And he's going to try to get you to sell drugs for him, because that's what drug dealers do. He's going to talk about why he takes drugs, why he sells drugs, and he's going to talk to you about something called money. And then you're going to meet Fred. And Fred's is a simple character. He's like me all the time. He's a nerd. Are there any nerds in here today? Yes, God bless nerds. Everybody that's a nerd, give yourself a hand. Everybody that's a nerd. Don't laugh. There's a famous saying that if you laugh at nerds, that might be bad, because one day you're going to end up working for one. It's a true story. Girls, take a look at these nerdy guys. When they grow up, they're going to be rich, they're going to be famous, they're going to get all done over and maked over and grow big muscles, and they're going to be perfect. We're going to take you inside my life. We're going to take you inside the world of drugs. I hope you have fun, and I hope when it's all finished, you think about drugs. My name's Boyd, and when I was little, I used to think about drugs. I used to think about drugs all the time, because everywhere I looked, people were talking about drugs. I'd pick up a magazine and open it up, and there's a story about drugs. People getting caught with drugs, police chasing guys with drugs. And I'd turn on the TV and there'd be a story about people with drugs. I listened to the radio and there's songs about drugs. Na 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 na. Cocaine. Everywhere I looked, somebody was saying, you know something, let's talk about drugs. So I started thinking about drugs. And I said to my mom, is it all right to think about drugs? And she said, yeah, it's okay to think about drugs. Just don't do them. She said, it's part of life. It's part of your existence in this world, and you have to think about the things that are in this world so that you can make decisions about them. So I went looking for drugs. I wanted to learn about what drugs were, but I couldn't find any. I come from a small place in the middle of New Brunswick, and in this little small community, nobody would show me drugs when I was 10 or 12. They said, you're too little to learn about drugs. But when I was in grade 7, I saw my first drug. I was out in the back of the school, way over in the corner of the lot where these guys were hanging out, the tough guys, you know, the guys that are over there smoking and saying bad words and carrying on. And this guy showed me this homemade cigarette, and he said, here, that's marijuana. Want to try some? No, but I just seen my first drug. I was in grade 7 and I knew what marijuana looked like because somebody just showed me. And he told me how much it cost, and I thought I was the coolest person in the whole world. Nobody was going to tell me about drugs because I just saw them. I knew it all. And in grade 8, the same place, a guy showed me this little tiny piece of what looked like little chunks of black licorice. And he said, here, that's hash. Try some of that. No. But I just seen my second drug. I was in grade 8. Nobody was going to teach me about drugs because I was too smart. Nobody was going to tell me nothing about drugs because I was too cool. I was hanging around with the tough guys. Nobody could teach me anything anymore. And in grade 9, this little plastic vial of what looked like was molasses was shown to me by one of those guys over in the corner lot, and he said, here, try some hash oil. I said, hash oil? That's the good stuff, eh? No thanks. But I just seen my third drug. I'm in grade 9. The teacher, the principal, the guidance counselor, my parents, nobody is going to tell me about drugs anymore. I knew it all. And I heard about parties. And I wanted to start going to parties because I heard everybody get stoned or drunk at parties. So I went to one. And when I got there, I learned that wasn't true. It's not everybody that takes and drinks alcohol and takes drugs at parties. As a matter of fact, it's only a small little group of people out of the big group that takes drugs or alcohol, but the reputation for the bad behavior gets into the whole group. Just because you're at a party with drugs or alcohol, that makes you somebody that takes them. That's what reputation is. But there was 2 guys there with a joint, and I wanted to see how this stuff worked. And I followed them guys down behind the house, down the path into the woods and out back. Because when you take drugs, you have to hide. Drugs are illegal. And these 2 guys, they lit up this cigarette, and I watched them. One guy was usually really alert. He was really attentive. He always paid attention. And he was right into sports. And the more he smoked this drug, the less he cared about anything. He'd sit there, and he was usually meek and mild, and the more he smoked this thing, the more he started going, woo! I'm stoned. And the other guy got right wacky like that too. One guy got really sped up, and the other guy got really mellow. I learned that was because marijuana is a psychoactive drug, and that means it affects your mind based on your body chemistry. And different people have different body chemistry, and then different drugs will affect them differently. And they got something called the munchies, and they beat her up through the path into the house. They opened up the fridge, they ate the turkey, they ate the chips off the table, ate the box of Smarties off the counter, took a 2-liter Pepsi and drowned her. They were on drugs. Now I thought at that time, when I was in junior high school, nobody was going to teach me anymore. But I learned more about drugs as I got older. I learned more about drugs when I went to high school. I went to high school, the biggest high school in Atlantic Canada. And when I went to go to this high school, my mother said, that high school is right full of drugs. I said, well, Mom, I'm going to go see for myself. And when I got to the school, I found out that that wasn't true. The whole high school wasn't full of drugs. Not everybody took drugs. It was like the party. That the party, there was a small group of people that had them, and the reputation for the party went to the whole group. That's what happened with high school. But there were people in my high school that had drugs. And every day, the 1 or 2 out of the 40 or 50 people that were in the school would go up to what they called Marijuana Mountain. They'd go up to Magic Mountain, Weed Hill. They had all kinds of names for this place. And then some of the people would be smoking dope, the small little group, and some would have these funny little pills. And one day this guy showed me this little square piece of paper with a cartoon on it, and he said, "Here, try that. That's acid." I said, "Acid? No thanks." But I learned about another drug. And I watched these guys when they took these drugs. They went back into class, and they walked into class, and they sit there, and they just went like this. And they didn't learn anything. And I thought, why did they waste my time and my energy of going to school and then being a distraction? And why do they waste their time? If they're going to take drugs and go to school, why don't they just stay home? It looks really stupid. I come from a poor family. I didn't think I was poor, but as far as money was concerned, we didn't have a lot. And when I was 16, I had to leave home and go get my own place. I had to go to work. And I went to work in a meat plant. And this meat plant was a place where I had to lift and carry heavy things. And I went from 205 pounds to 230 pounds in about a year. And I was still in school in the daytime. And I learned that drugs existed in the workplace. Yes, they do. There were 50 people that worked night shift with me, and not all 50 people took drugs, but there were 2 guys that every time there was a coffee break, they went out back and got in their car, and they smoked a joint. And I thought, I'm going to find out how much drugs cost, because drugs cost money. So I went up to them and I said, "Where do you get the money to buy drugs? You make the same money as I do. You have to pay rent, heat, lights, cable, telephone, groceries, clothing. Where do you get the money for drugs?" And he said, "Well, I like to use drugs, man, so I buy my drugs and then I pay my bills." And I said, "You can't do that. You can't, because you don't have enough money, because when I pay all my bills, I don't have money left over." And they say, "Well, I just pay whatever bills I can after I buy my drugs." And that's irresponsible. And I said, "Man, you know something? You smoke dope every day we work. You can't wait to get out there to smoke your drugs. And every day you use drugs, that means you're a drug addict." And they said, "No, man, I'm not a drug addict. I just like smoking dope every day." That's called denial. When you need a substance to make it through the day, when you need a substance to help you cope with a problem or with pressure, you have an addiction. And if you need that once a day or once a week or once a month and you can't live without it, then you are an addict. I finished high school. After 13 years, I rushed through a 12-year school system. I didn't do so good in grade 10. But I made it. And when I made it through, I still was working in the meat plant, and I wanted to get another job. And I went to work in bars. I went to work as a bouncer. And I worked in a lot of different bars in the city of Fredericton, and in these bars, I learned more about drugs. I watched people coming in to the bars on MDA, PCP, Ritalin, Tuinol, Dilaudid, acid, hash oil. But not everybody. It was just a small group of people, just like at the party. And they'd come in and they'd mix those drugs that they had with the #1 drug in Canada. The #1 drug in the world. It's called alcohol. And a lot of people, the majority of people in the world, drink responsibly. They don't go in and get hammered, smashed, or drunk. They go in and they have 1 or 2 of these things they call wobbly pops, or beer, or rum. They have 1 or 2 drinks, and they're responsible enough that it doesn't affect their life, it doesn't affect their career, their family, their finances. But some people don't. And I watched about a new drug one night because I was checking the washrooms, and I went in, and I wanted to make sure they didn't tear the place apart. So when I walked in, I looked in the bathroom stall. And even though I come from the country and I know what an outhouse looks like, I still know what a flush looks like too. And I know just by past behavior that when you sit on one of these things, your feet are supposed to be going this way. When I looked underneath the stall, this guy's feet was going the wrong way. Now I thought maybe he had some real serious knee problems or he was up to something. So I pushed open the door, and there he was, sit backwards, and he had this little mirror, and he had this white powder on the mirror, and he was scraping it up with a razor blade into these little tiny little lines. And then he took out this bill, and he rolled it all up, and he snorted this stuff in his nose. And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "That's cocaine. You want to try some?" I said, "No." And I grabbed him and I put him out the door. Cocaine, LSD or acid, hash oil, marijuana. I learned a lot about drugs. When I was working in the bars, I figured that no one else was going to teach me about drugs because I knew everything. But I didn't know everything, and my eyes really got opened in 1982 when I went to work in a prison. In this prison, there were people that committed break, enter, and theft. Real serious thefts, assaults, violent assaults, attempted murder, and murder. And they told me 90% of all the people in that prison were alcoholics or drug addicts. And 90% of all the people in that prison got caught by the police when they were stoned or drunk. And I said, wow, that's a lot of statistics for people that are only 12, 13, 14, and 15 years old. Attempted murder and murder. And I said, this is so great because I know everything about drugs, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to tell these young people about drugs, and they're going to quit doing it. And I said, hey guys, this is drugs. And they started laughing at me. They said, you don't know nothing about drugs, doughhead, and you don't know nothing about the world of drugs. And I said, what's the world of drugs? They said, all you know is what they look like and how much they cost and where to get them. But you don't know nothing about the world of drugs, like when you wake up and your sister and your friends are all down the street talking about drugs. They're hanging around the drug dealers selling drugs. When your friends are talking about getting stoned or drunk this weekend, they can't wait for the weekend. When you have your mother and father and your brothers and sisters that have been caught by the police and got criminal records for drugs, when everything in your whole world exists for the purpose of getting stoned or drunk, then you're in the world of drugs. And you don't know nothing about muling and lacing and transporting and cutting agents. You don't know nothing about the world of drugs, and you don't know nothing about what you do when you run out of drugs either. And they told me about sniffing and snorting and using inhalants, using things that aren't sold on the street to get stoned. I thought when you sniff gas, that was when you were taking and filling up the gas tank on the quad or the ATV, and all of a sudden you go, gas smells kind of good. They told me about their friends that took and put gas on rags and soaked rags and stuffed it on their face and left it there. And the same kid is in St. John, New Brunswick today in a hospital after 22 years shaking uncontrollably because his central nervous system is just gone. You can't do that to yourself and not get hurt. And they told me about crushing up things and putting it on the lens of the eyeball. And that same kid has got the lens and the cornea and the pupil burnt, and they're blind out of that eye forever. And about sniffing oven cleaners and glues, and the little hairs that are on the inside of your throat that are get burnt off from the noxious fumes, and they can't breathe right anymore, and they got lung disease. They told me about sick people. And when I left that place in 1987, I said, nobody is going to teach me about drugs anymore, because I've seen it all. But that wasn't true. Because I kept learning about drugs, because in the first of 1988, I took a new job. And I became a policeman. And I want to introduce that policeman to you right now. His name is Officer Merrill. I'm a cop. I know everything about drugs, right? Well, not really. I don't know everything about drugs. But I know a lot about drugs. And I know a lot about life. And the first thing I know is that I'm just like you. I come from a small place just like you. And when I got older, I decided I wanted to be a policeman. And I went and I applied for the job, and they sent me to a police academy. And at the police academy, they showed me drugs. They said, "These are drugs. Drugs are illegal." And I said, "Good, let me go catch drug dealers." And they said, "Hang on. To be a policeman in this country, you have to learn the federal laws about drugs. You had to learn about the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act, and the Narcotic Control Act, and the Food and Drug Act." I said, "Okay, I know the federal laws, let me catch drug dealers." And they said, No. To be a policeman in this country, you have to learn the provincial laws. You have to learn about the Motor Vehicle Act, the Highway Traffic Act, the Liquor Control Act, the Livestock Act, the Dog Act. When do you want me to catch drug dealers? They said, No, you're going down to Nova Scotia, you're going to Cape Breton into Glace Bay, and you have to learn about the municipal laws. You have to learn about the town ordinances, the municipal bylaws. You have to learn. Hold on, guys, when do you want me to catch drug dealers? And then they told me, "You can't catch them. You won't catch them all." You see, drugs are an individual choice. If everybody in this room decides they want to use drugs, there's not enough people with a uniform on to catch you all. That's true. I learned a lot about drugs as a policeman, but I learned a lot more important stuff than that. The first thing I learned was how to take young people out of ditches that are covered in mud and throwing up. And I learned how to take them home, and I'd say, "Please put your young person, your young daughter or your son on the side, and don't let them throw up on their back so they choke to death, and aspirate. And check to see that they're breathing and their heart's pumping." I learned how to do that. And I learned how to go to hospitals with young people that overdosed on drugs or alcohol, and I learned how to hold them on the gurney while the doctor put tubes down their throat, the big tube with the black charcoal liquid mixture that makes them throw up the drugs or the alcohol. Or we'd hold them down and we'd take and pump their stomach out with a stomach pump. And they'd be fighting back because the drugs or alcohol were making them a bit wild. I learned how to do that too. And I learned how to go to car accidents. I learned how to go to car accidents, and I learned how to pick people off the ground. Not always alive. And not always in one piece. And I learned how to put them in body bags, and I learned how to take and watch the coroner or the ambulance drive down the road. And the tow truck would pick the car up, and a beer bottle would fall out of the car. I learned how to do that a lot. I learned how to go to people's houses. And I'd knock on the door, and I'd say, "Excuse me, sir, but your daughter just died." And he's freaking out. He's freaking out. He's looking at me like I got three heads. He's mad at me. He's in denial. He's going through anger. Every emotion is pumping his blood about 400 miles an hour, and he's saying that's not true. Because the only thing he can envision is this tiny little baby that was born 15 years ago. And now she's dead because somebody wanted to drive a car drinking or smoke dope or take pills. And I learned how to do that way too many times. And I hate it. But I got to do that because I'm a policeman. I've watched people take and inject heroin into their veins in the streets of Vancouver. I've watched people, junkies, would take and boot up with a needle, and another junkie would pull the needle out, and he'd tie off his own arm, and he'd inject that same needle just to get that last little bit. I've watched people break into houses, steal cars, beat up people, get money to buy drugs. I've watched people abuse their family, ruin their life and their career just to get the money to buy dope. But it doesn't matter what I've seen. Because you're not going to really listen to me because you know I'm a cop. You know I'm a policeman, and there's this great big wall between you and me. Well, I'm going to tear that wall down. I'm going to break that wall down because I'm going to get two other people to talk to you about drugs. The first guy's name is Norm. And Norm is a drug dealer. And he's going to talk to you about drugs not from the same point of view I have. He's going to talk about the world of drugs through his own eyes, the way he sees the world. And then you're going to meet Fred. And Fred's a geek. Fred's a nerd. He's just like most of us. And he's got a story to tell you. And when it's all over, I just simply want you to think about drugs. Okay, Norm, you can talk to them now. My name's Norm, and I want you to think about drugs. I want you to think about drugs a lot. Yeah, I'm a drug dealer, so what? I like being a drug dealer. Yeah, I don't want to have to work. I don't want a career. I don't want the responsibility. I don't want to go to university. I don't want to do nothing. I just want to do one thing, and that's make money. You see, drugs are about money. That's all drugs are about. What did you think they were about? Solving problems? Oh yeah, I know people take them for their problems, but I'm just glad they give me their money. You know you got problems too, but I'm glad you got them. Oh yeah, your mom's in your back, your dad's in your back, your grandfather says you're lazy, your grandmother says you sleep too much. You got exams coming, you haven't studied, you got a big prom, you got no date, you got nothing to wear, you just get something to wear, you finally get a date to the prom, and you look in the mirror and you got a big zit in your nose. You got problems. Well, when you got problems, you come see me, and I'll solve those problems. Just bring your money. You know, some people think drugs come from outer space. You've heard about drugs, and you think that drugs are something that are psychedelic and come from faraway places. I'm sure there's people in here that think all you got to do to get drugs is call up to that Deep Space Nine crowd or that Star Trek crowd and go, yeah, can you beam me down a bag of weed, please? Or some of you people think all you got to do to get stoned is just take one of them there Tickle Me Elmo dolls and poke them in the belly and out pops the joint. You don't know where drugs come from. You're taking stuff that you don't even know where it comes from, so I'm going to teach you where it comes from. I'm going to take you all the way around the world, and I'm going to show you the origins of drugs. Drugs come from plants or chemicals that come from plants. That only makes sense. And I'm going to show you this great big green plant way down south where it's hot and humid and muggy. This big plant is called marijuana. Fred calls it cannabis sativa because he's got education. We just call this wacky tobacco, wildwood weed, Acapulco gold, Panama red, Glace Bay great. God, this is fun. We call it anything. We just want to get people to buy it so that we make money. But you can't smoke a tree, so we're going to cut that tree down. You can try to smoke a tree, but I don't think you can. You're going to take, and we're going to crush that old tree down, and we're going to take those long, thin, skinny leaves and those little flower tops and those little buds, and we're going to crush that all up, and we're going to make ourselves a joint. We're going to take these homemade papers, and we're going to roll ourselves some wacky tobacco. And we're going to tell people, when you take this drug, you're going to have fun. We say, yeah, you just take and smoke this stuff, and this will get rid of all your problems. We don't tell them nothing, and I don't want you telling them nothing about THC. I don't want you telling them about what Fred calls delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. I don't want you telling them about what we spray on this stuff, what we lace with it, what we mix with it. And I don't want you telling them about it being a psychoactive drug and it affects your chemicals in your body. I just want you to say, here, you smoke this and give me your money. Your mom and dad ever say to you, eat your peas, eat your vegetables, eat your carrots, they're good for you? Because it comes from the ground? Mom, I just finished eating my stew. Do you mind if I smoke a joint? Comes from the ground. No, my dear, go ahead. Let's get our mothers to smoke dope. Oh, yeah. Our mothers would be smoking dope. They'll be up all night ironing shirts with a banana. They'd be riding the vacuum cleaner through the living room, shifting gears. Boom, boom. Let's get our fathers to smoke dope. Our fathers will be smoking dope and they'll be sitting watching TV. They won't even be turned on. Just think of the money they save. No satellite dish, no cable, no whatever. Let's get our granny to smoke dope. Our granny be going right down the middle of Glace Bay on her new Honda 4-Tracks in her bikini going boom, boom. You see, that's why us drug dealers are so successful. We're masters at taking something dangerous and turning it into humor. We downplay what drugs do to you. We downplay how dangerous they are just so we can get your money. And if we can convince you that this is a soft drug, we can convince you that this won't hurt you, if we can convince you that this has no effect on you, then we will get your money. And we don't need all your people's money. We only need a small group of you people to buy drugs because that's enough for us to make a living. We lie and we downplay everything. We use humor. You don't need to take marijuana like this either. Us drug dealers know that you can get it in other forms. We're going to just take and crush that plant all up. Once we break it down, we're going to cut that old plant down. We're going to put a big piece of cheesecloth in the wall. We're going to smack it on the wall. We want the resin. We want the juice, the black, dark green juice from the marijuana plant to come out on the cheesecloth. And we're going to scrape it up. And we're going to put it in 2.2-pound blocks called kilograms. And the resin from the plant, the juice that hardens into like black licorice, is called hashish. Fred calls it cannabis sativa resin. Forget Fred. But we can't sell 2.2 pounds of hash to young people, so we're going to have to cut it up in little pieces. We're going to cut it up into little tiny squares or little pieces of like shoestrings, and we're going to call that grams of hash. And we're going to say, here, you smoke this hash in a little old pipe or put a needle on it and light it and just get the fumes coming up and inhale those fumes. Just give me your money. Or if you don't like hash like that, let's take and put all that hash into a big bucket and let's boil it all up and put some liquid in there, and all of a sudden the oil will rise to the top of the bucket, and that marijuana plant will make this nice dark black oil. And we're going to scrape that oil up into little vials. Little 1-gram vials, and we're going to put the oil in these little vials. We're going to sell those for $20, $25. We're going to call this stuff hash oil. Now, we're not going to tell young people what we mix in this either, the sewing machine oil, the Vaseline, the morphine or codeine. We're just going to say, you want to buy drugs, just give me your bucks. But not everybody likes marijuana products. It's okay. Norm's got lots of different kinds. And again, let's go look at another plant. Let's look at one of these tiny little plants that grow way down south in the hot, humid climate again, that has these big, round, fat leaves. It's called a coca plant. Now, a coca plant is not the plant where you get Cocoa Puffs or Cocoa Krispies or chocolate milk. It's a plant that has something inside the leaves. But we're not going to be like the old guy over there in the field that's chewing on the leaf trying to get the drug out. We're going to take that plant back to our labs. Us drug dealers have chemical labs, and we have scientists that extract the drugs from plants. And we're going to get them to extract the drug from this plant by boiling it and mixing in liquids, and all of a sudden there's going to be this little tiny snowflakes start rising up in the pot. And we're going to scrape those snowflakes off, and we're going to dry them out and crush them up from the paste that comes out of the plant. And we're going to make it into a white, tasteless, odorless, colorless powder called cocaine. Now Fred, he calls this stuff cocaine hydrochloride. But we don't care again what Fred calls anything. We just call this stuff nose candy. We call it smack, blow. We call this rich man's drug because this stuff we sell for $100 a gram. That's the same size as a sugar packet in a restaurant. We get $80 to $100 to $125 a gram. And we tell people, when you take this stuff, you're going to have fun. But don't be telling them about what we mix in here, the glucose or the dextrose or the Novocaine or lidocaine, the stuff that dentists put in your teeth to keep them froze. And don't tell them about the rat poison, the warfarin, that we mix in with this stuff too, because we want this stuff to look bigger than it actually is. And all those things are tasteless and colorless. We had a problem. The problem was we couldn't get this stuff bought by young people because they didn't have enough money. So we said, well, let's change the way this drug looks. Let's take cocaine and let's make it cheaper. But to make it cheaper, we first have to make it pure, and we have to take all that junk that we mixed in with it. We're going to take this stuff and we're going to boil it all up into a pot again and add a special ingredient. And the special ingredient's going to make it go snap, crackle, pop, snap, crackle, pop, and all these little rocks are going to form around the edge of the pot. And these little rocks are going to be now 100% pure cocaine. Very potent. And we're going to break those little rocks off and we're going to sell those rocks to kids. We're going to call this stuff crack cocaine. And when people smoke crack, they're going to feel good. Oh, there's no doubt about it. The first time you try crack cocaine and you take a draw off that crack pipe, you're going to feel like this Christmas came and there's 600 presents under the tree and every one of them got your name on it. That's the feeling you're going to get the first time you try crack. And then you're going to say, I need more crack. So you run back and you get more crack. And that great big feeling that you got goes, and it's only this big. And the next time it's this big and this big. And you can't get it back. You try to get that great big feeling back again, but your body doesn't let you get it back. So you start chasing the buzz. You start, come on, I got to get some more crack. Norm, sell me some more crack. Here's some money. And this big buzz that you're chasing, in Halifax we call it the ghost. It's like a ghost that haunts you. It just goes over your head all the time. Go get more crack. Go get some more crack. It'll feel good this time. It'll feel good this time. But it never does. And we make lots of money. But not everybody likes crack cocaine either. So let's go look at another drug. Let's look at one that comes from these things right here called poppies. Now, it's not exactly that color, but this poppy's special to drug dealers. We go and we look at these poppies and we say, wow, this is going to be good for us because we're going to make lots of money. And it's not because of the flower, because the flower falls off. We want that big onion in behind the flower. And when that flower falls off, we're going to take that onion and we're going to cut it all up with these little special knives. We're going to score little scratches into that onion, that little bulb that's in that plant, and out from the plant is going to come this really thick, gooey substance that looks like window caulking or silly putty. And we're going to scrape all that up into balls, and we're going to call that stuff raw opium, because it comes from an opium poppy. And raw opium is a painkiller. Raw opium's been around the world for thousands and thousands of years. And finally, one day, scientists figured that you can get good drugs from raw opium. You can get drugs so that you don't have to use a great big long pipe and a little tiny bowl like they did thousands of years ago in the Orient to relieve pain. You don't have to do that anymore. They extract from that plant Demerol, codeine, morphine. You heard of those. They're in cough syrups and Tylenols and special pills for people that have pain. But there's one drug that's in opium poppy that doesn't. It's not legal. It looks like chocolate milk powder. It looks like Nestle's Quick. It's called heroin. Now, people in the streets call this stuff junk. And people that take junk are called junkies. And when you take heroin, you have to take this stuff twice a day. Because like cocaine or great big amounts of other drugs, not only does your mind and your brain become addicted, but when you take these drugs, your body becomes addicted as well. And when you don't have that drug in you, you get pains, you get stomach pains, you get sick, you get cramps, you get diarrhea, and you go, I got to have my junk, I got to have my junk. And you'll do anything to get money. You'll break into houses, you'll steal, you'll rob from your parents. You'll prostitute yourself just to get money to buy drugs. You know, somebody said to me one time, Norm, I don't like those drugs that come from far away. So why don't they grow a drug right here, close to here, that has the same toxic level of poison, the same strength that cocaine or heroin does, and it'd be safe if it was grown here, wouldn't it? I said, well, there is a drug that grows here that is just that tough. It's just that strong, it's just that potent. It's called psilocybin. And psilocybin grows out in the fields. They said, psilocybin, I never heard of that. I said, well, we didn't have any luck selling it because it was called psilocybin, so we changed the name to magic mushrooms. And he said, oh, magic mushrooms, I'll try that. Magic, you must be good, eh? Yeah, and if they call it cocaine magic dust or magic powder, I'd try that too. So we sold psilocybin. We still sell psilocybin in little vials, 5-gram vials, in liquid form. We crush up these little mushrooms and we put the juice in and we sell them to people. Or we take them, crush them all up into powder and we sell the powder. People can snort it for 20, 30 bucks a gram. And we don't care that people are overdosing on psilocybin in Vancouver and Montreal and Toronto. We don't care about that. All we care about is the money. Heck, you don't even have to go doors to get stoned. What we do is we train people to steal pills. Us drug dealers say, hey, yeah, just go in and steal pills that don't belong to you. And what we'll do is we'll put them in 2 piles. We'll put them in uppers and downers. And Fred, he says they're called barbiturates or amphetamines. He calls them stimulants or depressants. We don't care what Fred calls nothing. We just say, here, take one of these pills and go have fun. But what we don't care about is that this says from a pharmacy. We don't care that this says from a pharmacist. We don't care that this says only to be taken by, only to take twice a day, side effects, allergic reactions, heart attacks, respiratory failure. We don't care about that. All we care about is that when we sell these, we make money. We know they don't belong to you, but if you take them and give us money and they don't kill you, you can come back and buy more. That's how us drug dealers think. One of the last drugs I want to show you is always in plastic or tin foil. This drug is in liquid form initially, and we squirt it onto little pieces of paper or in these little tiny pills that you can barely see called microdot. We take this liquid and we make these little tiny pills that we call hits. We call this stuff acid. Fred calls it lysergic acid diethylmide because he's got education. Or we just shorten it up and we call this stuff LSD. This stuff was a horse tranquilizer. And they used this stuff in the Vietnam War. They tried it to see if the Vietnam Army soldiers that come back from the war that had post-traumatic stress disorder, they said, let's try them on some of this here lysergic acid diethylmide. And they tried it and they realized this stuff wasn't safe. So what did us drug dealers do? We made it 4 times more powerful and we sell it to kids just to make money. This stuff's always in plastic or tin foil because this stuff goes through your skin. It can go in through the sweat pores of your skin, so we keep it wrapped up tight. You ever get bored? Us drug dealers get bored all the time. We said, you know something, we've got pretty near all the plants that we can use now, and we've tried all these different drugs. Let's make our own drug. Let's make a drug for young people that go to parties. And at parties there's bright lights and there's music. So let's make a drug that they'll take at a party like that. Let's take one of these drugs here called amphetamines, these stimulants that speed you up, and let's mix that with one of these drugs over here called hallucinogenics. Let's mix it with one of these drugs that makes you see things. Oh yeah, like you'd be lying in it. We tell people you lie in the bathtub and you'll see Scooby-Doo floating around you with his snorkels and flippers on. Oh yeah, we tell people that all the time. We say this is going to be fun when you take hallucinogenic drugs. But what you don't tell people when they take hallucinogenic drugs, that they could be thinking that they're in a coffin buried alive for 4 and 5 hours. That they could think that they're in a culvert covered with worms and bugs. You don't tell them that either. You just say, okay, let's mix this drug up. We got this thing that'll make the lights seem brighter and the lights will be more enhanced, and mix it with this speed drug. And let's call this pill ecstasy. That's what we'll do. But we've had trouble with ecstasy because what we forgot is that this thing here, this amphetamine, speeds your heart up. And it's going faster than what your brain is telling your body to do. And you're breathing faster. Your respiratory system's going faster than what your body told you to do. And you forget to drink water because you dehydrate, and you're dancing and carrying on, and you're seeing all these things, and all of a sudden it's just like somebody pulling the plug. And we've lost a lot of people to ecstasy. These drugs are dangerous. And when you mix them together, they're more dangerous, and we're going to sell them for $25, $30, $40 a pill just because we make money. You see, this is what drugs are about. You mess with my money and you're messing with me. I have to be tough and mean. I know drugs are illegal, and I know that I'm a bad person, but I don't want responsibility like I told you. I just want your dollars. You mess with me, and I'm coming to look for you. You get involved with me, and I'm going to try to keep you hooked the rest of your life. I got to let the geek talk. I don't want the geek to talk, but his turn is next. Don't listen to the farm boy, and don't listen to the cop, and definitely don't listen to him. I told you the truth about drugs. You think about it. All right, Fred, you can talk to him now. My name's Fred. My name's Fred, and I want you to think about drugs. My name's Fred, and I already said that part. I'm here to tell you that Norm, he don't tell you the truth about drugs. He don't tell you the truth about drugs because he don't want you to know. Because if he told you the truth about drugs, you wouldn't buy them. And he don't tell you nothing about drugs. Like, for example, he didn't tell you that me and him, we grew up together. And when we were growing up together, we used to play basketball together. And we used to talk about girls together. And we used to play floor hockey together. And we used to talk about girls together. And we used to play Nintendo and Continues and all them space games on TV. And we talked about girls together. We were friends. But something happened to Norm when he got older. And when he was in grade 8, he started hanging around those guys way over in the parking lot that do bad things, and he started hanging around the guys with drugs. And when he started hanging around those guys, he started changing. He started using drugs. And when he started using drugs, he was always paranoid. He was always looking over his shoulder because he knows drugs are illegal. And he knows that if he gets caught with them, he's getting in trouble. He didn't tell you that. And he didn't tell you when he started selling drugs either. When he started selling drugs, he even got more paranoid. And he started hiding away and getting people to call him on cell phones and calling them up and getting them to send messages on the computer so he could get drugs. He never told you that either. He never told you nothing about your body. He never told you when you take drugs like delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol that burns those little hairs on the inside of your throat. And it burns your respiratory system. And it affects the chemicals that are already in your brain because God put them there. And when you mix something in your body that don't belong, there's a reaction. And he didn't tell you about memory loss and forgetting things, did he? He didn't tell you that. And he never told you about your blood. He never told you about putting drugs like cocaine or heroin in your blood. And God, He made blood a certain way. He put all kinds of vitamins and electrolytes and different things in your blood so that you could live. And when you mix things like cocaine or heroin in your blood, that hurts you. And He never told you none of that either. And He never told you about your central nervous system that runs down the back of your neck from your brain to your hands and your feet so you can touch and feel and smell and taste. Those little nerve endings. And when you take drugs that don't belong to you, like those pills and that, and the mix in there and screws up your central nervous system, you can't fix it. You can't change it back. Because sometimes when you mix chemicals, there's no reversing them. He never told you that either. And He never told you about your brain. And your brain's a great big mass of wires, and inside that brain of yours there's messages going all over the place, sending messages so you can move, and you can think, and you can make decisions. And when you take drugs, those little bridges, there's little bridges in your brain where they send nerve systems, send messages called neuron receptors, and they have synapses and things going on. And when those little bridges in your brain get cut, you can't fix them. There's no electrician that's that small can go into your brain and fix up those little bridges. He never told you that either. And he never told you one thing about Timmy. He never told you nothing about Timmy, did he? Me and Timmy, we were going to the dance, and we were scared because we were going to have to dance with girls, and we were going to have to dance. We didn't know how to dance very good, so we said to Norm, "Can you sell us some drugs?" So he sold us something that didn't stink. He sold us some little tiny pills called acid, and he said, "Here, you take that and you'll have fun." So I took mine and I put it in my pocket. And I went home and I phoned Tim up. I said, "Tim, did you take yours yet?" He said, "No." I said, "Let's go down by the bridge and take it on the way to the rec center." So we did. We got down by the bridge, and Timmy took his out and he put it in his mouth and he swallowed it. And I took mine out and I put it up by my mouth, and I got scared and I snuck it back in my pocket. And we weighed it. And we weighed it. And Timmy, he started acting funny. He still looked the same. He never changed physically, but he started acting funny. And he'd get up on the guardrail by the bridge and he'd start walking across the guardrail. And I said, "Come on, man. Get down off the bridge because you could fall and hurt yourself." He said, "We got to go to the dance." But he wouldn't get down. It was just like I wasn't even there. He wasn't listening to me. And I said, "Come on, man. Get down off the bridge because you could fall, you know." No reaction. And a big truck come by. And this big truck come by, and it was square, and it was pushing the wind. And when it went by the bridge, the wind pushed Timmy. And he fell down. And he hit his head. And I went down and I shook him. I said, "Come on, man, get up." And he wouldn't move. And there was blood coming out of his ear. And there was blood pouring out his nose. And I said, "Come on, man, wake up." And he wouldn't move. So I ran up and I stopped the car, and it was a policeman. And I said, "Come down and help my buddy. There's something wrong with him." And he went down and he shook him and he said, "Get up, get up." But he wouldn't wake up. He said, "What happened?" I said, "He was up on the bridge and he fell down. It was a mistake." And he said, "He must have fell pretty hard because he's dead." No way. There's no way my friend's dead because I was just talking to him. We were going to the dance. We're supposed to be having fun. But he was dead. And they took him to the hospital. They put him in this big black bag and they took him to the hospital because they had to take him there to see where the drugs went. I had to tell them about the drugs because I knew they were going to find them. And when you die from drugs, they have to take and open you up and look at your brain and your heart and your liver and your kidneys and your blood. They have to look at it because they have to find out where the drugs went. And I didn't like it. My friend and I were supposed to be at the dance, and he's in the morgue. And 3 days later, they had a funeral. We went to the funeral, and everybody in the whole town was at the funeral except for one guy, Norm. And we were walking through the funeral, and we were going through the lineup. We were saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And I got to Tim's mom, and I went to say I'm sorry, and she turned right around. She said, "You get away from me, you drug dealer." She called me a drug dealer. I only touched drugs once in my whole life, and she's calling me a drug dealer. And that's when I entered into the world of drugs. That's when my whole life started changing. She said to me, "You're nothing but a drug dealer." She called me a name. And then they started calling my parents the parents of the drug dealer. And my house became the house where the drug dealer lives. And my street became the street where the drug dealer lives. There's his house. My town became the place where the drug dealer lives, and the kid fell off the bridge and died. He was taking drugs. Norm said, "This is only going to affect me." He said, "You take drugs, and that's only going to affect you." Well, he lied. He lied to me. He lied to me because all he wanted was my money. He don't care about me. And he don't care about you. Or you or you. He lied to me. I'm going to let somebody else talk to you for a minute. I told you at the front of this that what you were about to see was real. And it was. It's obvious that I'm not a drug dealer. Or I never was a drug dealer, but I've known a lot of them. And the truth of it is there's not one Timmy. There's three. And the first Timmy died when he was 15. And he never died falling off a bridge. He died because he drove his trike right into the side of the bridge and right out through his back. And the second Timmy died because she got into a car with a bunch of people that were drinking and people that were irresponsible. And the car flipped. And she never made it. And she was 16. And the third Timmy started taking drugs when he was 12. And he started taking pills and he started drinking because he had a lot of pain inside him. He didn't look like everybody else. He didn't have the fancy clothes. He didn't fit into the little cliques and the little groups, and people teased him. He was one of the ones that nobody would talk to. And he just had a few friends. And he thought that if he drank or he took pills, it would help him. And it didn't. So he started smoking drugs and taking more and more pills. And at the point in time that he couldn't take it anymore, that he couldn't have any more drugs in the system, he took a rope. And he died. And if I could have been there the day that he died, I'd have helped him. I'd have took the rope off, but I would have had one problem. I would have had to take away all the lies that the drug dealers told him. I would have had to take away the 6 years of drug dealers telling him drugs don't hurt you. I would have had to take away all the rumors that his friends spread. They said that drugs don't hurt you. I had to take away too much and I couldn't do it. And he's dead. And when your friends die, they don't come back. And if your friends die from drugs and you go to the funeral and somebody looks at you and says, "Why did this happen?" Don't open your mouth. Don't open your mouth and even try to explain what happened, because nothing you can say is going to bring that person back. Nothing that you can say is going to make that family feel better. Nothing that you can say is going to take away the responsibility that you had when you didn't say, "Don't do that." Nothing. When I came here today, I asked you to do one thing. And it's still one thing. When somebody comes up to you and they take drugs and they put them in your hand and they say, "Here, try this," I want you to think about drugs. I want you to think about them a lot. Thank you very much.